All right, Bobs. We're back with Bukowski in the Bathtub. Recollections of Charles Bukowski by John Thomas. Of course, you see it says Recollection of Charles Bukowski, but I don't like the wording. I've also taken the liberty of removing the loose pages, so we go right to chapter 4. Small, grimy, and nothing in the refrigerator. John, did I tell you about the motorcycle cop? Philomene, go on. John, well, we hated cops, and why not? It's a good thing, a healthy thing to hate cops. But he made one exception. Philomene, one exception? What do you mean? John, he thought motorcycle cops were beautiful, that they had beautiful legs, he said. This is funny, and of course he was laughing when he told me, but with those shiny black boots and the tight-fitting black pants, these were the only men he felt like reaming in the ass. Never saw one, or so he said, that had bad legs. He would watch one bending over, writing some poor slob a ticket, and well, as I say, suddenly he'd be picturing himself in the scene, getting it on with the cop via negativa? Negativa? I don't understand what that means. Philomene, let's start at the beginning when you met. What was the situation? What was your first image of him? Why would you just go from that story where Bukowski admits he's gay? John, it was at a collating party. Collating is when you assemble something, right? This was at John Bryan's house in Silver Lake. Bryan and I had edited a magazine called Notes from Underground. Philomene, which issue? John, I think it was the second issue. Philomene, did you edit the first issue with him? John, no. This was a magazine that Bryan began in San Francisco. When he began it, he called it Renaissance. I was in that also. Bukowski was in it. This was 1962. Actually, Bukowski and I are in the same issue. Here I have it right here. See the hand on the cover? Renaissance, 1962, issue 4. Philomene, who else is in there? John, Curtis Zahn. Philomene, he gets around everywhere. John, let me see. Renaissance, the peace scene. We reject death as an institution. Here in issue number 3, Lenny Bruce, Gregory Corso, Charles Bukowski. Actually, that Renaissance number 3 was the last magazine I ever submitted to. Renaissance 4, he had to ask me. John Bryan came down to L.A. shortly after I did. We'd known one another in San Francisco. He came down to take over the L.A. Free Press. Philomene, so how soon after you arrived in L.A. did you meet Bukowski? John, 6 months, early 65, that's 30 years ago. Bryan decided to start the magazine up again, but he changed the name from Renaissance to Notes from Underground. Philomene, I wonder if Bukowski got the title for Notes from a Dirty Old Man from that. John, Bryan may have come up with the title because originally the stuff had been in an underground paper Bryan started called Open City, and the column was called Notes from a Dirty Old Man. I had a column in there too, Miriorama. Well, the pages of the magazine had all been printed and they needed to be assembled in the proper sequence, stapled together with front and back covers, and then the spine glued on with black tape. I have the magazine around somewhere. Philomene, explain collating. I realize that for the readers. John, they know what a collating party is. Philomene, hell, they do. John, some of them were contributors, others just John's friends, and they were all sitting around his dining room, assembling the pages and putting on the covers, gluing spine tape, black cloth tape on them. Philomene, was Paul Evangelisti there? John, no. This was before Evangelisti came down to L.A. This was 1965, 1966. Philomene, do you recall about Bukowski's entrance? John, he just strolled in. He came in a little late. Philomene, what were people's reactions at the time to his presence? John, oh, he was considered very important. Philomene, even then? John, in underground little mags? Right. Philomene, what image did you have of him, his clothing? What he was wearing? John, he was wearing very tacky clothes. These were hippie days, so everybody there was wearing that tie-dye crap, headbands, all that. But Hank was wearing some kind of polyester pants and one of those polyester shirts. You could wash in the sink and dry overnight. And a plastic belt. You could have been a barber in some small southern town. Philomene, and you? I guess I was wearing Levi's and a sweatshirt with the sleeves cut off. Probably that same old sweatshirt you see in the photograph where I'm sitting in Echo Park with the earphones on. No, that ain't it. I didn't feel like collating. The hell with that. And Hank didn't plan to collate. He just came over. We had talked on the phone once or twice before. We went into Brian's kitchen to talk. I forget about what, but apparently that got him interested in me. No, not apparently. It did get him interested in me because a few nights later he got my number, called me on the phone, and invited me over to his house. I didn't feel like it that night, so he said, "Oh, you'll have a good time. There are some great poets over here, and we'll talk about poetry." Philomene. He really said that? John. Yeah. Well, I said, what great poets? And he said, Alvaro Cardona Hine. Do you remember him? Philomene. No. John. Nah, nobody does. I think he was a big early connection for Holly Prado. She might have been in one of his workshops. Philomene. What happened next? John. I was still on the phone with Bukowski and I said, what? Alvaro Cardona Hine, a great poet? Sort of sneering. Anyway, I told him I couldn't make it that night, maybe another time. He got sour and offended that I wasn't going to dash over immediately to his place. Philomene, was he used to that? John, yes, in L.A. apparently, in the poetry scene, to have been invited to visit Hank was a big thing. Actually, I did come over a few nights later and I took my tape recorder. Philomene, do you have that tape? John, I haven't been able to find that one. Maybe it's at Carlos Hagen's house. Philomene, at Carlos's house, John. John, don't you remember? Carlos said he had picked up some boxes of my tapes. Anyhow, I stayed a long time at Hank's that first night because I was on speed. Then at midnight he started in with, all right, I know you want to leave now, getting belligerent and heard about being abandoned. I had given no indication that I wanted to leave. I was on speed and as I say, so I could have stayed another 3 days. I teased him about that attitude. I sneered at him. A couple hours later he sort of fell asleep, a drunken sleep, and I left. Philomene, so you'd known him 2 days and you'd already sneered twice. Did you get the feeling that he was easily hurt? John, yeah. Or maybe it was just because it was me. He'd taken a fancy to me. Philomene, why do you think? John, brilliant, tough guy, ... He put it in the poems. Oh, yes. Before I forget this, he started calling me a lot on the phone. And in those days, I hated telephone chat. When I moved into that Echo Park house, there was a lot of phone activity, and I didn't even like to answer the phone. I told him this, and we made an arrangement, a signal. He would ring 3 times, hang up, and ring again. So I'd always answer for him. Philomene, always? John, yeah, always. He liked that idea, so it was our mutual thing. When I called him, I would ring 3 times, hang up, and dial again, and he would know it was me. Of course, in his case, he would frequently pick it up after the first ring. He dug phone stuff. Philomene, describe his house, the house on DeLongpre. John, there was a little bitty porch. When you came in, there was a living room. There was a living room, then a bedroom, kitchen, and bath. It was a furnished apartment. Looked like a flat, a place for transients. How long is this damn chapter? Obviously, second-hand furniture. Living room floors covered with cheap linoleum, 1 sheet of ugly linoleum that was rolled out like a carpet, but all curled up around the edges. Step in the front door, and on the right-hand side in the corner was his writing table with his typewriter. It was sitting underneath a window, out of which you saw the wretched yard and some of DeLongpre. A lot of what he wrote had to do with what he saw out the window. Tucked under the writing table was a barbell with a pathetically small amount of weight on it. On the left hand, as you went in, were a ratty old couch and a couple of uncomfortable chairs. Philomene. The bathroom? John. Small bathroom. Unremarkable. Philomene. No evidence of excessive scrubbing and vomiting? John. No. Philomene. The bedroom? John. Sort of nothing bedroom, a bed and a dresser. Philomene. The kitchen? John. Small, grimy, nothing in the refrigerator except cans of Miller High Life and 3 eggs. On the dirty stove, a frying pan containing 2 partially eaten fried eggs and a tin fork. He obviously ate the fried eggs out of the frying pan, right over the stove. Philomene, how did he respond to your bringing a tape recorder with you? John, he was flattered, until I told him I taped everything. But then he said, these tapes are going to be valuable to you someday. Philomene, he said that to you 30 years ago? And here for decades we've had them just sitting on them? John, crushing them, yeah. Philomene, do you have that first tape? John, no, but here's the one about motorcycle cops. One evening in my pad on a hot July in 1967. Listen to this. Hank, yeah, you know, every motorcycle cop I see, man, they look so beautiful. They have such long, slim legs. They're bending over, giving a guy a ticket. These are the only guys I feel like reaming in the ass. Man, those tight-fitting black. John, right. Hank, they look, no matter how crappy I've never seen a cop with bad legs yet. I've seen women with bad legs. John, it's some old queen lieutenant that approves the uniform that does it, right? Hank, oh, well, you know, but all these guys, man, I think, wow, I'd like to ream that guy in the ass. And that's the only guys I want to ream in the ass are these traffic cops. John, hang around a riot. You'll get your chance. Hank, yeah. Well, they'll get theirs and I'll get mine. John, just call a cop. That's all. Just call a cop, And when he comes to the door, Hank, giving a wolf whistle. Come here, baby. John, yeah, hide behind. Hank, there have been plenty of cops at my door. John, I'll even lend you my kosh. Hank, kosh, thank you. John, yeah, here you go. Picks up a homemade blackjack, hands it to Hank. Hank, that's what I need, John, yeah, you stand tight behind the door. He comes in there and, whap, whap. Hank, oh, examines the blackjack. John, made that. Hank, turning it first one way, then the other. Oh, it goes this way, right? John, it goes either way, depending on what you want to do with it. Hank, I had a beautiful leather black job with the little thing in there. Well, I'll tell you, John, I think you and I will get along tonight, baby. Here's your thing back, grinning, returning the blackjack. John, oh. Hank, but you must realize that we will have moments of spiritual and mental disagreement. John, I'm fully prepared for that. Hank, well then, okay. John, it's worth it, Hank. You got the nicest chips in town. Hank, chips? John, chips. Hank, chips of skull? John, oh, that's jail talk for buttocks. Hank, oh, pardon me. I've only done a little time, not a lot. John, that's right. Hank, because I used to be a special delivery messenger, How do you spell that? Delivery? This is some brilliant stuff. I mean, this is fucking absolute rubbish talk. I mean, these tapes, if they're valuable, are valuable for the sake of morons. That's fucking drivel. Anyway, goodbye, bruv. Goodbye.